Welcome into Sideline Signal. I'm Andrew, as always, joined by Tyler. We are back for another week of the College Football Playoff Committee reactions to the rankings. We had a crazy rivalry week. A lot of games go, some surprising ones, some really close games. Obviously, one of the bigger ones, Miami fall to Syracuse. But yeah, there's been a lot of shakeup in what the top 12 in the playoff bracket will look like. We're here for it. We're waiting for the show to start. We're only a few minutes away. It's currently 6:59 Eastern. But Tyler, what are you looking forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to seeing the 14 teams that have a shot. Besides Clemson, anyone that's not in that top 14 probably isn't getting a shout unless all hell breaks loose during conference weekend. I am also curious to see where Clemson is. I personally would put them in the 20s at this point, if ranked. Because to be honest, their resume is horrible, and it would be a travesty if they ended up beating SMU and getting in because they're horrible. Their resume is Miami as well. I want to see where they're ranked. And then is it Alabama or is it South Carolina? So South Carolina has the better resume as we've seen through resume rankings and just looking at the numbers in general. But Alabama beats them head to head in a very close game early in the year. Now we've seen the committee kind of disregard early in the year games with other teams, so I do wonder if that's the case here. But there's a whole lot of different things, and this could go very poorly for our like projections and what we want, or be spot on. So this is going to be wild. How about you?
Yeah, well, I think it's also important to note that the committee has also kind of overlooked head-to-head matchups at times too. If you remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they had SMU above BYU at 13-14, even though obviously BYU beat Southern Methodist in the head-to-head. So I think that's going to be interesting. Like you said, seeing where Clemson fall because they still have everything to play for. Where's a team like Iowa State, who's now playing in the Big 12 title game? Where are they going to fall in the rankings? They're definitely going to rise. I'm curious to see kind of the order because, like I said, for me, the top 12, I can kind of expect what the teams are going to look like, but the seeding is what I'm curious to see. Does Notre Dame jump a team like Penn State now, who just struggled in the rivalry, or not in the rivalry game, but a few weeks ago? They've been struggling a lot, but Notre Dame's been on fire. Obviously, it was a close game against USC, but will they jump? Where's Texas going to go? All of that. How far is Ohio State going to drop? I'm curious because I just want to see what the matchups look like for the playoffs as we stand. I think those are the biggest things for me.
Yeah, and I'm a little afraid, and Andrew and I talked about this before the show. I'm a little afraid that Ohio State drops to that 8 seed, and sitting at 9 is Indiana. And I don't want to watch that again. I'm not going to lie to you. I hope Indiana keeps it close or wins because I am not a fan of Ohio State. But I don't want to watch that again. So I'm hoping that that's not one of the matchups. I would assume Texas is at 2, and I honestly feel like they're going to put Penn State at 3, even though Notre Dame is much more deserving. And I feel like for Notre Dame, this is a wake up call to join a conference because you're sitting here probably 3 or 4 in the ranking, but yet the top seed you can get in the playoff is 5. So this is pretty wild as they're getting into it now. I know you're a bit behind me, but they've started to show the rankings here.
See who is 25. Memphis making it up. Seth Hennigan and company take down Tulane last week. That was a crazy game. Hennigan
Yeah.
is now the AAC all-time passing yards leader. Army back up into 24. They take on Tulane in the AAC championship this weekend. I think they need a lot of chaos. I don't think they'd get in as the at-large if Boise State lose. Colorado
Probably.
up to 23 from 25. They win, but no Big 12 title for them. Their playoff hopes are done. Just getting ranked.
Syracuse. Yeah, Syracuse. That shows me that jump from 20 from unranked to 22 shows me that they have some respect for Miami still.
Agreed. And so that'll be interesting to see if they somehow find a way to stay in. Illinois up to 21. Okay.
Rhett Bielema made a pretty good resume push for his the Illinois squad. Obviously didn't pay off as they're sitting there at 21.
Yep. UNLV up to 20. They have, they control their
They
fate. They
do.
beat Boise State. They are into the playoffs. So,
Missouri at 19 here,
mm,
sitting at 9-3. Kind of left out. Eli Drinkwitz was like, "Oh, we got a chance. We got a shot." I'm sorry, friend. You were the one SEC team that was never going to make it.
yeah, especially after the massive loss to Alabama.
Yeah. And Texas. I mean, they were shelled by both of those teams.
BYU at 18, so they're not respecting the resume that they have. Obviously, again, no Big
Yeah.
12 title for them. Not much that you can say.
We got Clemson here at 17. They dropped
Hey.
5 spots from 12. That seems like a pity ranking to me, so that it doesn't seem so wild when they win or if they win the ACC and get in. That's what that tells me.
But I think it also shows that they respect South Carolina, that this win only dropped them 5 spots. It wasn't a crazy upset. So
That
that
is
should
true.
bode well for South Carolina.
Yes.
Now let's see who will be in at the 16. Iowa State up to 16. Like I said, they're very much alive. They got to beat Arizona State to get in now.
Yep. UNLV, Clemson, and excuse me, Iowa State have everything in front of them that they want to accomplish this year.
Exactly. It's simple. Win, you're in. Lose, you're not.
Arizona State at 15. So we got a
Okay.
15-16 matchup in the Big 12. Still don't like it. I feel like Arizona State deserves to at least be in the field if they're one or two teams away from the playoff. They should be further up.
Yeah, I agree. And now it'll be interesting to see where Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina, Miami, where they go.
I I wow.
We'll see right here.
Yep.
Who's at 14?
You'll see. This is disappointing in
South
my
Carolina move up 1 spot. So they
they beat
favor Ole Miss and Alabama.
yeah.
They-
So which all right, so that tells me South Carolina's out. I'm
Yep.
sorry, Gamecock fans, but that's it for you.
Because even if Clemson win, it's not going to do enough to push them in. That is,
Wow.
I mean, the committee clearly have gone to head for this because Ole Miss and Alabama have beaten them both. But South Carolina is the hottest team right now. I don't like that at all.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, okay.
Ole Miss at 13.
13. So Alabama's the 12
I knew it.
seed.
They're
Wow.
they're gonna make the playoffs, folks.
Mhm.
Probably.
Well, okay, unless yeah, no, this is wow. But are we going to see Miami at 12 or are we going to see Alabama at 12?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I forgot they
Yeah.
were even in this.
Because theoretically, if Bama's sitting here at 12, they would still be the first team out.
Are we kidding?
Let's see. I'm still haven't seen number
No,
12.
it's
Oh,
it's are we kidding?
Miami down to 12. Wow. So yeah,
Every
Alabama.
other team on that screen is better than Miami. Arizona State, South Carolina, what was the other team? I'm blanking right now, but
Ole
or
Miss.
Ole Miss.
Yeah.
They would all beat Miami by 20 points on a neutral field, on the road, at home. It doesn't matter. I, why are we hanging on to this team?
Well, Alabama's going to be a playoff team. That's set in stone. There's nothing for them to lose anymore. Alabama's in the playoff.
That is insane. I mean, you get embarrassed at Vanderbilt and at Oklahoma. Jalen Milroe doesn't even look like a top 50 quarterback in FBS over these last couple of weeks. Bounce back in the Iron Bowl, but this is ridiculous,
But
guys.
did they bounce back? They won by
I don't even
15 to a bad Auburn team.
I I can't I don't know.
And
I
Ole Miss struggled against Mississippi State.
I'm trying here, Andrew. I really am, but
I
there's no
don't
defense for this.
I don't
What
get it.
I don't either.
We're going name brand.
Name brand. This is ridiculous.
I wow. Yeah, I think right now Bama is safe into the playoffs. Like I said, I'm curious to see where they sit, if they're like the 11 because of the Arizona State. But I'd be curious to see what happens if Clemson went and beat SMU. Would that keep Bama in, or would SMU stay in and just push out Alabama? I'm curious.
So my kind of discrepancy here is like, okay, so no, all right, never mind. The ACC champion has to make it because they'd be that fifth conference. I
Yeah,
was gonna say, like, is there a way where Clemson wins and Alabama just takes their spot? But no, the ACC champions
it
got
would
it.
end up being SMU's spot to take if SMU
Yeah,
dropped it. Boise State up to 10. They've done everything right. Although if they lose this game, they're out. I
yeah.
don't unless the committee tries to put them in as an at-large, which I doubt they would.
Wild to me. It is really wild to me. Indiana at 9 as well.
Yep.
Forgot to mention that they're firmly in.
Yep.
Just maybe some chaos in front of them to see if they host a playoff game in Bloomington. That would be amazing in Kirk Cignetti's first year.
Yeah.
definitely nothing to sneeze at. They took care of what they needed to. Hopefully, maybe they can get some revenge on Ohio State.
Yeah, we'll
That's what I'm
see.
curious to see.
We're still getting the rankings, so we've still yet to see the playoff bracket. Where's Ohio
Um,
State going to go, though? I'm guessing by your reaction, they might be at 8. No, SMU up to
oh,
8. I love it.
you love that?
I love that. I
Ohio
would maybe a
State
little
should be
higher.
behind SMU.
What'd you say?
Ohio State should be behind SMU.
I I I don't know. I have mixed feelings with that. They You got to think they've been one of the best teams on paper resume
Yes.
all season. And yes, the Michigan loss is bad. They didn't look good against Michigan, but the way that the committee is going, I don't hate that SMU is at 8. I'm not
Okay.
surprised at all that this committee is putting Ohio State in the top 7. Doesn't shock me at all. Now,
Seventh spot.
who is 7? Tennessee Volunteers.
I guess Ohio State must have won this past weekend. I guess.
I think the thing to me that it shows is that they really respect rivalry games.
I
That it,
guess.
you drop your rivalry game. This committee does not seem to care that much.
I think what
Yes.
it shows to me is that everyone on this committee is a booster to one of these teams because this
Yeah,
is crazy. There's so many more deserved teams that have had to claw their way all the way up until this point because they're not a name brand.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of lost. And I think SMU's at 8 because okay, Ohio State at 6. That makes sense, I guess, in terms of what we've already seen. Could they be lower? Yes. But I think it's interesting. I think that SMU is at 8 and hasn't gone up more because they don't know if they can beat Clemson is what it really thinks to me. And if they lose to Clemson, I think having them at 8 and then having them drop out, that's reasonable for them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Georgia up 2 spots
Georgia
to
five.
5. It makes sense, although 8 overtime win against Georgia Tech at home, you win. You find a way to win. So Notre Dame up to 4. Okay, so it'll be Penn State,
Yeah,
Texas.
it's gonna be. Okay, so I just want to mention one more thing about Ohio State. How is that loss to Michigan any worse than, Alabama's loss to Vanderbilt? We saw how that affected them. It's the same deal, except they were at home. They were at home. They faced a team that is averaging 120 or less passing yards. I don't know the exact number. I'm just going to assume it's less than that. And that was dead in the water for 3 quarters of the season. And you're going to sit here and tell me that that loss is as good as losing to a ranked team? Because we've seen other teams lose on the road versus a ranked team and drop 4 or more spots.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
It's crazy. And I think it's interesting too because Ohio State has played themselves out of a title game. They're not playing in the Big Ten title game. It's Oregon versus Penn State. So I don't know, dude. I don't This committee has been interesting all year. Right now, Miami would be the first team out. Alabama would be the 11 seed. So, like I said, I'm very curious to see what becomes of Alabama if SMU drop. Do they stay in as that final team in, or would it be SMU? Because right now, Miami's out of the playoffs. They're done.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough because all of the teams that are playing for their title game are firmly in my eyes, other than I guess SMU.
Okay, so the first matchup we get here is Arizona State traveling to Happy Valley to face Penn State. Then just rolling through our other ones, the 9-8 matchup would be the Tennessee Volunteers traveling to the Shoe to face Ohio State. The 11-6 would be a rematch of the BCS National Championship and a playoff match back in the 4 team. It would be Alabama traveling to Indiana to face Notre Dame. And I did not see that last matchup. It flashed away before I could see it, but
It's Georgia hosting Indiana.
Georgia. Oh, geez,
Still,
I
I'm
am.
glad we get to see more variety where it's
Yeah,
not just conference matchups. But I mean, I'll be honest, I think the most competitive game out of those would probably be Notre Dame, Alabama.
yeah.
Like I said, I don't think Alabama necessarily should be in. Just maybe that's a little bit of bias or personal opinion, but I think Notre Dame wins that game. It's going to be cold, mid-December. You're in Indiana. Notre Dame has been one of the most consistent teams this year.
I mean, if there were a game that they would win, it would be that one. And if you put Alabama, Notre Dame, match them up, over history, what have you. If it was at a neutral site inside, I would say Alabama would win that game. But yeah, I agree with you. The conditions would favor Notre Dame. But I am gonna come out and say it. This is the worst ranking that I have seen since they started doing this
I agree. I might have to agree with you there. I don't think the committee got this right.
at
I
all.
I don't even know what to say. Like it's hard for me to like I don't understand it, man. I really don't.
I don't get it. And if we're gonna sit here and respect the team like Ohio State for having two losses and still put them at six, shouldn't Georgia be in the top four in the ranking at least? Because they have a better resume than Penn State. They beat Texas head to head and embarrassed them, quite frankly, on the road. And they have a better resume than Notre Dame as well. So
Yeah, I don't know, dude. This is weird. I'm just like I can't
I know, I get it. I
fathom
feel the
this.
same.
And I'm trying to think of potential like things of how the seedings would change based on the conference championship games. Like if Georgia beat Texas, where is Texas going to be? Are they going to be the 5 seed?
I
Because
I think
if Penn State loses to Oregon as well, like how are what is the seeding going to look like?
Well, I can't tell you that, but what I can tell you, the two biggest winners of today, Alabama and Tennessee.
Hmm.
They won the day. Tennessee is 100% in now.
Yes,
Um, and Alabama definitely won the day because they shouldn't even be in this position.
I
I
agree.
feel like I feel like the committee loves Kalen DeBoer and wants him to stay in Tuscaloosa. That's what
Mhm.
that tells me because I I, I don't get it.
I too am confused. And it's weird because I get it. Ohio State's losses are better overall than like Miami's losses, but you respect the hell out of Ohio State for being two loss and losing to Michigan, where they looked awful. You put 7 points up against Michigan
Yeah,
at home,
yeah.
and you haven't beaten Michigan in 4 years.
I
It's
mean, if we're
not,
gonna go based on that, I mean, Miami played better. I mean, they lost, but they played much better. They scored 38 points.
I agree. I I feel like if you're going to respect Ohio State and keep them higher, you have to respect Miami and keep them in.
Yeah, it's a lot of hypocrisy here. That's what I'm seeing. Um, I mean, we just gotta hope, Andrew. We just gotta hope that our the teams that we want to win these big conference games win, because that's the only way we're gonna get the semblance of a playoff that we want. And
That
I,
makes
I hope to our listeners out there that, you agree with us and you're seeing this because it's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Some teams have gotten a first, second, and third chance. I'm looking at you, Crimson Tide. And then a team like SMU hasn't even gotten their first chance yet. They're only there because they have the record that they have.
yeah, and like I said, I fully think that the committee would leave out SMU if they lose to
Me
Clemson,
too.
which is I don't think you can make that argument. I really don't. Because it's the same thing. You can make the same argument with Indiana. I SMU have a better resume than Indiana. They just do.
Yeah.
I and again, it's going to come down, which I stand by it every time. You cannot punish a team for playing in their conference title game. So if SMU lose to Clemson in the ACC title game and get knocked out, I'm going to be so angry because it's what is the point in playing in it then? Because right now they would be firm in if they were 11-1. Let's say their only loss was a conference game. Let's keep in mind SMU's undefeated in conference play. They didn't lose a single conference game. Their only loss was a 3-point early season road loss to BYU, who are currently top 25. And at one for a good portion of the playoff committee rankings were a playoff team. I
There
don't get
was
it, man.
there's some massive shade thrown at BYU as well to have them drop all the way to 18,
I
or
agree.
I guess have to work your way back up from that 19 spot to 18. They like at least tease us a little, at
I
least
agree.
make us think that other teams can make the playoff.
Yeah, and I think even looking at the playoffs, I don't like the matchups are different. They're unique. They're not conference matchups, which I already said, which is good. But at the same time, I think the only one that's truly probably going to be a good game is Tennessee, Ohio State. But the conditions, obviously, it's going to be in the shoe. It's going to be cold and probably snowing. That might just play in favor of Ohio State. But I think right now, obviously, Penn State would beat Arizona State. I believe that it's going to be in Happy Valley in Pennsylvania in
Yeah.
December. I'm sorry, if you're not an East Coast or a Midwest person, it gets cold and it is
Yeah.
not fun to play in the cold. It's going to impact the way they play, but I don't think Arizona State can hang in the cold. They're going to lose most likely. Penn State will beat them. I think Notre Dame will beat Alabama. Ohio State, Tennessee would be a good matchup. And I'll be honest, I don't think right now, unfortunately, I don't think Indiana will beat Georgia.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
in my eyes, the only real game that could be competitive is Tennessee, Ohio State.
yeah. I mean, I held out hope because I thought to myself like so much crazy, so many upsets. The committee's got to be able to see what's the best 12 teams in the country right now. And they just completely missed the mark. And although I agree, like these are matchups that we would see, and I'm happy about that, they're not the matchups that are unique that I want to see. I don't want to see that. And to be honest, I'm sitting here. I'm thinking Alabama's going to just find a way to win this thing if they get in, because that would be so Alabama of them.
Yeah.
Not deserve a spot in the beginning and then win the whole thing. And it would make for great television. I mean,
But I think in the long run, it would be awful for the
yes,
committee
yes,
because in reality, and maybe it's just because so many teams have gotten upset this year, maybe in a different year with the 12 team system and a three loss won't get in, but you can't say that they deserve it. You really can't. And
no,
that's the thing, it's the most deserving 12 teams.
yeah,
And I don't think they deserved it. There's been plenty of games where they don't look good. And it's weird because Miami is the same way. I don't think either should be in. But here we are. Like I said, I think South Carolina deserve it. If it came down to Ole Miss, Alabama, and South Carolina, I get the head to head, and I understand that. And if that's what they say is the main reason, fair enough. I'm not going to be like that's crap. But at the end of the day, you got to factor in because they do it all the time. Which teams will compete in the playoffs? One of the biggest ways you can determine that is the form. And South Carolina is in way better form than Ole Miss
yep,
and Alabama.
yep,
Shit, Lenora Sellers looks like he could win a Heisman right now.
yeah,
He's not going to win this year's Heisman, obviously. He's not in consideration, but Lenora Sellers is one of the most electric players in college football right now. Him and Rocket Sanders are playing phenomenally. I think they could give teams a run. I really do. I think they'd give teams more of a run right now than Alabama would. And I know that's going to be a hot take, but
I agree with you. And let me just say, unrelated to the playoff, but Lenore Sellers definitely deserves his flowers. He reminds me a lot of Anthony Richardson, and by the end of his career, hopefully he's more polished and maybe he could be an NFL draft pick. I think he's a junior, or no, he might
he's
be
a,
a
he's a
sophomore.
redshirt freshman.
He's a redshirt for oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Make sure he doesn't transfer to South Carolina because you guys are going to have some teams coming up this year because they lose Rocket Sanders, but I have a feeling that they'll be able to get another great running back. And then they got weapons on the outside. They got the defensive line set. This was the year for them, the first year of what's going to be the golden age, possibly the return of South Carolina Gamecock football. They deserve this one way more because you think about it, like South Carolina's worst loss 27-3 versus Ole Miss at home. Yeah, bad, but it's a ranked team. Alabama's worst loss 3-24 on the road at Oklahoma, a team that lost to Texas by damn near 40 points on a neutral site where half of the stadium was their fans. What? Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I
This sport is so amazing, and it's become the NFL. I mean, yeah, we could sit here and blame NIL, and yes, that is part of it. But the players aren't the ones requesting $15 million. It's the boosters. And then, obviously, it's pretty clear the teams with the biggest budget are getting rewarded in the rankings. So I don't know. And I agree with you. Conference championships, they probably need to go if it's going to be like this. Add another week to the season and
yeah.
just determine a conference champion.
Yeah, just make it round robin. You play as many conference games as you can, and the best team with the best record, that's your conference champ. You just do a regular season at this point because
Yeah.
if we're going to just start leaving teams out for being in their conference title game and not winning, And if it's different. If it's a team like if Alabama was playing in the SEC title game, they lose to, let's say it was Texas. Texas beat them. They go to 4 loss. I'm okay with them being left out because I think they're a borderline deserving team already. But if it's like SMU's case, who are 11-1, undefeated in conference play and lose in the title game, there's no way that they should be left out.
And let's just also point this out. Yeah, they beat Duke close and they beat Boston College close, but every other game it was never in doubt. Besides losing to BYU, it was never in doubt. They hammered down on teams. And I can't tell you besides like a team like Oregon for the most part and you know Ohio State, I guess, besides Michigan, there has been no teams that have been hammering conference opponents week after week like SMU.
Yeah. And think about it. You tell me the team, and I'll show you the close game. Every team in this playoff has had close games, whether win or lose. I mean, Oregon, the 3-point win over Boise State, they beat Idaho by 10. Wisconsin was a 6-point game. They have close games. Ohio State's played close games. Nebraska is one of the ones that I come to mind.
Oh yeah, I
It was
forgot.
a 10-point win against Penn State, but they've played plenty of close games. Penn State, half of their games have been close. So it's you can't fault a team for having close wins in conference because they all do. I mean, Oregon, I know they were playing number two Ohio State at home, but that's a 1-point win. They all play close games. So I don't th I hate that close games can be even considered,
Yeah.
because all of them have them.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's what college football is. That's why we love it, because
Yeah,
anything can happen. Anyone
exactly.
can beat anyone.
Yeah. All right. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yes, and I want to leave the listeners with this, and I want you to respond to this. So hypothetically, if we jumbled up the conferences, if you plopped Penn State in the ACC and Alabama in the Big 12, would either of them even make the playoff? Do you honestly think so? Like if they had the same record?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And we're looking Penn State's third in the country because they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of teams where if you flip them with any name, they get in or they don't get in. You
Yeah.
know, like BYU right now. If BYU was named Alabama with their resume, they get in.
They'd be the 3 seed.
Exactly. And if Penn State, wasn't was anybody else, they don't get in.
If Penn State was SMU, they wouldn't get in.
I agree. I agree.
And SMU's barely getting in with their better resume.
I agree. I think it's ridiculous. One more question I'll ask you before we leave. Do you think there's any way if Boise State dropped the game to UNLV that they can get in as an at-large, or is it truly win and in for them?
No, I don't think so. Based on the committee, if it were up to the numbers, if it were up to even a fan vote, I think they would have a pretty good shot. But based on this committee, they got to win to get in. I mean, they're sitting at 10 right now. Uh, they're definitely dropping two or more spots to the loss to UNLV. Um, Also something to bring up for that group of five real quick is that if Tulane beat Memphis, Tulane would be, even closer now to making it. And if Clemson won the ACC, let's just say, and Tulane was still two loss and American champion, I would argue that Tulane would get in over Clemson. I was thinking about that during the day today. I was just curious about that. But no, I don't think Boise State would make it as an at-large. They got to win the conference.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree. I mean, I think it still comes down to the same argument. You can't really punish a team for making their conference title game, but I think they'd find anyway. If we're thinking SMU's getting left out for losing their conference title game, it's the same argument, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, to kind of recap, I don't think the committee did a good job this week. I don't think we're going to be happy with the final playoff structure.
No, yeah, we were given hope last week. It was pretty good. But this jumble up is terrible. I really think it is. And I'm overall disappointed. I just want to say that Alabama would pray for a loss like SMU has. I'm going to say that Alabama would pray for a loss like Indiana has. They should not be in that 11th seed. It's ridiculous. But I'm overall disappointed. And yeah, I agree. I think this playoff field isn't going to be what we want, but hopefully we're not, the majority. I hope that most college football fans got what they wanted because that's the goal of this, and I hope that it's a great playoff anyway. Of course, we're going to be back, Sunday finding out what the actual field is, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I kind of feel like most college football fans are going to be relatively unhappy, but we'll see. Obviously, once we get off after I wrap us all up, we'll be able to tell. But yeah, we'll find out. Conference championship games on Friday and Saturday, and then selection Sunday. Obviously on Sunday, we will find out who our 12-team playoffs are and who plays who. It's going to be fun, even though we're disappointed. I'm excited to see what the final bracket looks like. But yeah, other than that, that about wraps it up for us. So thank you all so much for listening in and watching. Make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. Follow us on TikTok at Sideline Signal. Tyler's going to be posting a wonderful video of his thoughts on TikTok after we get off. So make sure to tune into that. Follow us there as well. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you so much. But that wraps it up for us. This has been another one of our live reactions to the playoff committee rankings. And thank you. Have a great rest of your night.